This is the Random or Nintendo podcast for August 6th. We're in August, right? Yeah, we're in August. August 6th, 2024. To my virtual left I'm Kevin, and to my virtual left is Jason. I haven't hosted in a minute.
Hi. Yeah, it's been a bit. It's been a bit since you posted. That's true.
Yeah, and to my virtual right is Angel.
Yeah, it really has been a minute since Kevin's hosted.
Yeah, as you can tell, I'm very, very rusty here.
We should just talk about for the whole episode how long it's been since you last hosted. Seems to be the
How
theme
long
already.
has it been? Like a month?
It's probably been a month and a half.
Yeah, at least.
Because I did the
at
last
least.
one. I think Jason begrudgingly did the one before that. I typically
not
volunteer because,
begrudgingly, but,
believe it or not,
yeah.
I actually take my hosting job it's like a treat. It's like a treat that Jason will rarely share.
Maybe rarely
And-
share. I mean, in the
Never
old
shares his
podcast,
treats?
maybe, but I'm an only child.
Because yeah, exactly. This is a new era where Jason pretty much has to share. And I believe by now, maybe just in I guess we call it the Quarantine Chronicle post Random Nintendo era. I guess Jason has just gotten used to it's more of a rotation, but I feel like, if any of us ask him, hey, you down to host again? I'm sure Jason will. I mean, sometimes he still hosts even
If
when
someone
he's not
told me,
hosting.
if I was like in the back of a crowd and someone was like, Jason, you can host, I would shove everyone out of my way, regardless of what injuries they may get from me doing so, and run to the front and host, yes.
I mean, here's a very subtle Easter egg for those of you at home. If you notice, when I host, more than half the time, Jason pretty much takes over the last third of the podcast because, it includes the housekeeping and stuff. So,
Well, technically I do that on all of them then, and it's the last 5 minutes, if even that. Because you guys always throw it to me for housekeeping, because no one likes to housekeep except me, apparently.
There's a lot,
Hey,
man.
you love housekeeping, yeah.
Are we
love
still doing
housekeeping. Oh, I'm not
Stitcher?
saying it's a
What
negative.
even
I
is
love
Stitcher?
housekeeping.
I never even heard of Stitcher, let alone have been on Stitcher.
Well, it's okay, because
Like-
Stitcher's gone now. So
Stitcher
you don't
was
need
like
to
one
hear
of
it.
the yeah, Stitcher was like one of the very
Stitcher's
first
dead.
podcast apps that I would
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, Stitcher allowed us to be in cars. So you could be in a Ford Taurus and be play around Nintendo, and it would know what that is and do it.
opposed to Stitcher is an app that most cars would have natively. Is what you're saying?
It was in Ford Sync and stuff. So literally, you don't even need a phone. You could tell your car, I want to hear the musings of the Random Nintendo podcast, and it would maybe, if the voice recognition was good enough, it would take you there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stitcher was also one of the very first podcasting apps that I think started introducing subscriptions.
Yes, I think so.
I think that's where I jumped off the board.
And now it's dead.
Oh, I thought you
because
meant
Kevin
subscriptions
jumped
to
off.
a specific podcast, not to the app
I
itself.
think it was both, or you know what? I think
Jesus.
Stitcher was specifically radio, if I'm not mistaken. That then they
It was
introduced
called Stitcher Radio, and then they added podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah, then they added podcasts, and then they had Stitcher exclusive podcasts that you did have to pay for a Stitcher subscription.
Mm-hmm.
So
And-
And
I could wait an hour and change to ask again, but what are we on besides Google?
We're housekeeping up front.
Apple.
No. See, you're 0 for 2, Angel. Google is dead as well.
Oh
And I
my
don't mean because
God.
of the monopoly thing today. They are a monopolistic company according to the Department of Justice, and a judge. But
Okay,
no,
so
I mean
besides
they
Apple
shut
and
down Google
Spotify,
Podcasts.
are either of those still around?
Yes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, iHeartRadio, probably something with SiriusXM. I guess Pandora because they're owned by SiriusXM. And then a bunch of random ones. If you have a weird Android app that just does podcasts, we're probably on there because they all come from the same central feed. So
iHeartRadio is the one that stands out to me as it sounds really old, and it sounds like something I've heard a lot said at KRS 101 when I used to listen to that on my
Yes.
way to work every day.
Yes.
Is that just what is that?
Clear
Earth
Channel.
101 or
No, I think it means iHeart. So
Gotcha.
Clear
iHeart.
Channel, which is a parent company of a bunch of radio stations. There are a couple conglomerates of radio stations in the U.S. now, and Clear Channel is one of them. But Clear Channel is not a fun name, and they wanted to make radio cool again, and apparently renaming yourself to iHeartRadio about a decade ago was how they chose to do it. and they own a bunch of stations around the country, and they have a lot of sway. Like, they do a music festival at T-Mobile Arena in Vegas every September for a weekend. They do a award show every May. Like, they're trying to be like Radio MTV when MTV was like at its prime in the early 2000s. But really, it's just a big corporate conglomerate of radio stations. So that's what iHeart is. And we're on it.
Okay.
So go corporations and conglomerates. Yay. But not monopolies.
So you would say you endorse and support all the platforms we're on?
I don't. I like having us there. I'll say that. I like being where the ear holes are.
Okay,
so if that means iHeart, then iHeart.
And I guess YouTube, right? Like, we're not on Vimeo.
We are on
Vimeo
YouTube. We are on YouTube.
No, that's in addition, like, I know we're on YouTube, obviously.
We're not on Vimeo. Unless you guys want to do a video podcast one day. Hey, flash poll, everyone listening, tell us on social. Do you want us to do a video podcast one day? Because if so, we could be on Vimeo.
Was your feed going to be just like a dark closet? Like, do you even have a light? Just your laptop light?
I do have a light. I will
Is
have
it
you
creepy?
know. So I've been recording in this tiny closet since I moved into my apartment in late 2020. And I'll have you know, today is the first day, because of how hot it is in LA, that I actually left the closet door open. Usually, especially when we had a cat that lived in the bedroom with us, I would close the closet door and I'd be in a very tight space. But today I'm in a tight space with an airway. So
we talked about this in San Diego. Where have you tried recording in just your office space?
So the office used to be rather echoey, and the cats would be in there meowing and whining to do things and use the litter box in there. So it might not be the best fit. But if we were to go video, I have a neon Ram Nintendo sign in that room. That would be a great backdrop.
But to be fair, you were also using a lower quality mic at the time.
This is true, but the litter box would still be littering away.
We
could try it.
Put the litter box outside for.
Unfortunately, the office is also a very hot room in my apartment because it's the one room without a wall unit AC. So I could try, but I don't know if it actually saves me much except a little elbow room. But I'm happy to try, and I'm happy to report back in a future episode. But yes, today is a monumental day because I have. It's like they put holes in the box in my carrier today. I have air. I can breathe. It's very exciting.
Oh, okay. As long as you can breathe.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
which means more air in my diaphragm for even more talking from me. If you thought I talked a lot, just now that I have air, get ready.
I think we know you talk a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference.
Fair.
So, should we just get into this thing, or does anybody have any?
I mean,
any what?
Well, you and I, Kevin, saw a lot of each other at Comic-Con, but Angel was off doing his own things.
Too much of each other, to be quite honest.
Arguably.
All of each other.
Almost. But
almost.
Angel,
we were nude within each other's vicinity.
Yeah, within square footage of each other, there was both of us being naked independently. This is true. But Angel, you were hundreds of miles away when that was occurring. So I know what Kevin and I were up to, but how have you been? What are you up to? I feel like I just took over hosting, but I feel like we almost excluded Angel, so I wanted to ask.
I've been good. Keeping up with it was. I was honestly
the Kardashians.
I'll say, it was fun. Keeping up with
the Kendall,
with the Comic-Con squad, so to speak, because this is now year 2 in a row of having skipped over Comic-Con. And I don't think I'm not done being burnt out yet. I think maybe like another year or two. We'll see. But it was fun keeping up with the chat just because you see sign up for this thing. Jason's just on top of all of that stuff, which I'm sure he'll get into more details later.
I was planning to talk about how I got us everything. But yes, I have a command center at home where it's like, My sleep hours changed entirely just to get us free tickets to things. Not even kidding.
Yeah, and it's just it's a change in priorities at the moment. And during that time, I guess as I wanted to, didn't do much. Just a lot of tidying around at the house, just chilling. I did go to a Flow concert. That was really fun. Just watching, the band that plays a lot of my favorite Naruto intros, play some Naruto intros and a Dragon Ball intro, which was really neat.
And not to clarify the progressive lady. Different Flow. Yeah?
Flow from Japan. Yes, they're a
No
rock
W.
band.
Or with a
Yep.
W.
Well,
Progressive has no
FOLW. Yes, yeah, with a W.
Yeah, okay. The one with no W is the lady from the... Anyway, that's a dumb joke. Sorry.
And other than that, like just expanding collections. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned that. No, I definitely have. That I've essentially started collecting watches ever since my fitness tracker died at the Tough Mudder. I recently added a new Casio, typically named or known as the Casio Oaks by the just people, I guess they call them that. That's what I kind of got into. They're Casios with an analog, with hands, and also a digital reader, so it has both. But the strap is clear. It's like a smoky translucent gray, and the dial kind of has like a weird blue orange kind of reflective effect that looks pretty neat. But the watch that I got recently, even more recently than that, because I did get that one recently, is one where the face is literally just a spinning CD. Like it's just like if you were to flip a CD over, like a music CD, that's the watch. And it does move. It's not obvious what time it is. There's like a small pause button and play button spinning around, and one of them's the hour hand and one of them's the minute hand. And I guess at some point I also just decided I'm collecting mugs. So, and I've been
How many mugs in were you where you're like, oh, I guess I'm collecting mugs now?
Well, because I guess I've already had a bunch of mugs, but we just didn't really have a lot of practical space to... They really weren't very convenient to access in the house. So I really just used one, or like whichever one was like most accessible. But it was typically like this giant blue Donald one or a small like Ninja Turtle one. But then over time I ended up... Most of these were just gifts. Like with an Evangelion one, a Donald Duck one, or another Donald Duck one, I should say. I have 3 Donald Duck ones now. Another Ninja Turtle one, then another Ninja Turtle one, and then a Godzilla shaped one, literally in the shape of Godzilla. It's not the easiest to clean, but it's
what
very
do you
fun.
drink out of? The top of his head?
Yeah.
His mouth?
Oh,
okay.
He's like kind of cylindrical shaped, kind of.
Sort of.
But but over time, like not just to clear space from the house so that those mugs are more accessible, I took almost all of my mugs, actually pretty much all of them, and just made space for them. At work, I have like a ottoman that's kind of emptied out, and now I just like rotate mugs out like every 3 weeks. So every couple weeks, I just have a new mug, and right now, like the other week before this one, I was using it looks like it came straight out of God of War. It's like a vase with Kratos on it, which looks really cool. Before that was like literally just Donald Duck's head, like with the bill and everything. And this week I'm using one that's just Kirby. Like it's literally like someone made a ceramic model of Kirby, feet and arms and everything. Normal Kirby proportions, so yes, he is perfectly round.
And
but he's a mug.
Him a lobotomy?
Yeah, it looks like someone cut out, I guess, like an oval at the top. So to comfortably drink from it, you have to drink from it from the side. So it's not, you don't drink from it head on like you would a normal mug. Otherwise, you don't have enough clearance. This one has a learning curve. There is a mug with a learning curve. And
yeah, there's a mug with a learning curve. We're talking about mug clearance. Like we didn't think this conversation would happen.
Yeah, and eventually, I do have some goblets here that we never ever use, so I might as well just take them to to work at some point. And I know you've seen this one because I think I got it back in Santa Barbara. It's like a giant Ninja Turtle goblet, and also a Chewbacca goblet. But yeah, I mean, I just use them for coffee, tea, mainly coffee and tea, and the occasional like matcha latte or something. And that's pretty much been that. That's all I got. Back to you.
I was muted. Back to you, audience. God damn it. All this time I was muted.
Oh.
Anyways, Flo. Did they play all your hits?
They did.
What was your favorite?
I mean, obviously, the one I really wanted to hear was Sign, and they played it. They did play Colors. they did play Go. That was like their last one. And
Probably the
they
one that
played
got everybody the most hyped.
Yeah, that was like their pretty much the audience sings a song.
Mm-hmm.
And they played Remember, and then they even, and like I mentioned, because they did the fighting, the Dragon Ball Fighters version of Chala He Chala, they also played that as well, or they started with that one.
Mm-hmm.
I did think it was
nice.
neat that before, I guess, the songs were grouped by anime, which makes sense. They're not just gonna jumble it all around, but before every, I guess, set, you would have like pre-recorded dialogue by, the characters from the show, or the main characters from the show, kind of having like a little back and forth introducing what's coming up, but it was all in Japanese. So I was only able to catch like every other word and just kind of be like, okay, I think I get what's going on a little bit. And for the most part, like
translate it at any point.
No, yeah, they didn't translate anything. Like half the time, I would say more than half the time, the bandmates were talking to us just in Japanese. And very few times did they actually like say something in English. They knew, but yeah, like they obviously just kept asking like, "Are we having fun?" Like they just said like "Mina-san wa tanoshimu," like tanoshi desu. But yeah, it was fun. I guess I didn't expect to get like little Japanese practice during that.
Right. Oh, that's fun. I was very not upset, but I was like, damn it! Of course, it had to be Comic-Con weekend. I would have loved to have joined you.
Oh yeah, it would have been fun to like have done that with someone. But at the same time, I will say that something about going to a concert by yourself, whether it was this one or another one, it's pretty great from time to time. I don't mind having one that's just letting me soak it all in after not having to, talk about how much like I liked something right after, or which one I liked or why. Just, just kind of being there in the moment. Just existing.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, did you go by yourself? But yeah, it seems like you did.
Yeah. Everybody with the Comic-Con. You and Elvis were gonna go, and then the dates popped up.
As a fellow often solo concert goer, preach. I totally agree with some of what you're saying about there are some perks of going by yourself. You kind of just do your own thing, be in your own zone. Like, yeah. There are some niceties. I know a lot of people. There's don't go to concerts by themselves and don't like it, but there's something nice about it for sure. It's fun with friends. It's fun by yourself, but they're different experiences that are equal. I'd say.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Yeah. Some things are better about it. Some things are better about watching it with someone else. But
of course, yeah.
It just depends. It depends. But yeah, that's pretty much that.
Cool. As alluded to earlier, Jason, we went to Comic-Con.
We sure did. It was hot.
It was balls hot. Jesus Christ. It was... I don't remember if it was as hot as last year.
Last year was actually...
But it was hot.
I feel like there are a couple years where it actually wasn't that bad, but this year is definitely up there. And it's also the week I probably get the most tan, which is ironic given what it is. But yeah, no, it was a warm year. A fair amount standing outside in the sun for various things, per usual. But yeah, I mean, what do you think of it, Kevin? You were kind of in and out a bit because you had to come back to Orlando, Mill. But what did you think of the con overall this year?
I honestly wasn't. This was probably my least favorite year, not because of anything con related, more because of like you just alluded to. Yeah, I had to go back to LA for work, and then immediately drive back over, which was a pain.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is, but
in terms of what was at the con, how'd you feel about everything this year?
Well, see, that's the thing, right? I actually was at the con for maybe 15 whole minutes on the floor.
Wait, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. That
because like Wednesday, because I typically don't ever do preview night. I typically don't because
our friend and I tend to if we can.
Yeah. So I typically don't do preview night. So Wednesday night we got in, I think like around 11:30, and so there wasn't much to do there, which was fine. We got there late. It is what it is.
Yep.
Then Friday, I woke up you guys were already on the floor, and
You
I
mean
had to do some
Thursday?
stuff for work. Sorry, yeah, Thursday.
Yeah.
I had to do some stuff for work, so I didn't get out of meetings until like 2 p.m. That's when I went to the show floor for like 20 minutes because immediately we had to line up for
The coolest thing we did at the con.
the what was it called? It was the
Deadpool
the
and Wolverine, a celebration of life.
a celebration of life event.
Yeah,
which we'll
we'll
talk
get
about.
into. Oh yeah.
And man, we were in line for what, 4 hours for that?
3, I think, roughly.
Maybe like 3.5
3.
to like 4 hours.
Yeah, I think just shy of 3.5.
Mm-hmm. And that didn't get out until
Like 9:30.
about 9:30. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I mean, show's over. Friday
Well,
was
it wasn't quite over. There was then a fireworks show, but yeah.
Sure. But
Yeah.
I'm saying con wise.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that was it. That was it for Thursday, and then Friday, as you were saying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Then of course we move into Friday where I had to go back to LA. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Saturday, came back immediately that night. And then Saturday, I forgot what I did Saturday.
You were hanging out with your other group of friends a good chunk of the time.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
when we waited in line for the FX activations.
Yeah,
which we'll talk about.
Line.
And then hung out with my other group of friends. And then Sunday, I mean, I don't get Sunday tickets, so yeah,
Right.
I was on the show floor for like a total of like 20 minutes.
I'll be honest. In terms of the show floor, there wasn't as much that directly resonated with me and my interest. There's some cool stuff, but I feel like in past years there's been a little more that skewed my direction and a little more that was like interactive things, photo ops and whatnot. And there were still some of those, but this year felt like in terms of stuff I was interested in, at least, it was more towards like things you would buy or like kind of a shopping experience. And then even then there weren't that many exclusives I was into. So the show floor itself this year wasn't as necessarily exciting for me as it was in past years. So I don't know if you... I mean, obviously your interests are slightly different, but I don't know if you missed as much by not being on the floor this particular year.
Right, and I'm
versus
typically not
others.
I'm not the kind of person that like, oh man, I need to sign up for the Mattel thing, so hopefully I
gotta
get
get the exclusive. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that kind of guy, and I probably will never be that kind of guy. And no hate
Sure.
to anybody who does that. Like, by the way,
Yeah.
unless it's like something really cool that it's just like, if it's still there and I can get in line and wait maybe like 20-30 minutes, I'll buy something.
Right. If it's Nintendo,
damn.
I'll do it.
I totally forgot that there was something I did want to buy. You got like a little charm for something. The Viz booth. Oops. Whatever. Yeah. So like that's my con experience in a nutshell.
Mine, I think I'm very much like, I mean, I've talked about it on the podcast before, but I like spectacle, I like scale, I like experiences, I like getting marketed at. So I'm like way more like full force, like on the floor all the time, like running around to all the offsites, which for those who aren't familiar with Comic-Con are basically like brand activation pop-up things they do in the like surrounding campus of the convention center, behind the convention center, across the street from the convention center, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, for me, it's always like this big hustle of like doing all this stuff and staying in line and running over here.
Yeah,
and running over there.
and we've talked about this before. You like to min max your Comic-Con.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I like to. Excuse me.
Min.
I like to go with the flow.
Yeah, you just roll with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely min-max. I definitely try and like take in as much as I can, which, you know, has its pros and cons. I think that's partly why when we were talking about how I had like a command center before Comic-Con. So like we have a group chat of however many of us are going to Comic-Con or however much or at Comic-Con any year, and we're all in that group chat, and I'll just start bombarding it like 2 weeks out. There's a great source. I'm sure most conventions have something like this, but the unofficial Comic-Con blog, San Diego Comic-Con unofficial blog,
Which they might as well just make an official.
they might as well
blog.
make it official. Everyone that's involved with Comic-Con is like aware of it, but they collate and collect and share all the things happening as they're announced. They work with all the companies involved to get the information, and they propagate it out and they tweet it out. And there's like a 2-week stretch, 3-week stretch where my Twitter feed is like double the number of tweets just because of this. I have alerts turned on my feed to alert my watch whenever something goes up, you know, to get tickets to something, whether it's like the IMDb boat where they have like Deadpool DiGiorno pizza and like Lurkana cards that I gave Angel, or, you know, something more interesting like a full recreation of the Iceberg Lounge from the Penguin, which is coming out this fall, with a speakeasy inside of it. And so I'm like constantly like trying to get every ticket to everything, and it's usually free. It's always free. Yeah, so that's kind of the mindset going in, and then when I'm there, I'm just like boom, 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 and trying to hit everything. I will say this year in particular, though, it felt more comic, but like I usually do like the comic adjacent stuff. Like I'm into certain shows, I'm into certain movies, I enjoy, whatever, but I'm not like going to the Marvel panel, going to like do something super DC heavy or anything like that. But this year, like the two bookends, I feel like, or that Deadpool event we did the first night, which we'll talk about, and then the Penguins Iceberg Lounge, which I did with a friend of ours the last night. And it was just kind of interesting how like this was the most like comic book IP, comic book centric Comic-Con I've maybe ever had, in part because of what wasn't at Comic-Con. Like there are no game companies, which I'll talk about in a bit, but or very few game companies. But yeah, I was kind of like looking back on it after. I'm like, wow, I actually did comic book things. Huh. Look at that. So that kind of surprised me. But I feel like we should talk about the coolest thing, which was the Deadpool experience we had. Right?
Yeah,
like
sure.
that was so it's opening night of Deadpool and Wolverine around the country. And it just happened to coincide with Comic-Con. Maybe there's some marketing mojo that made that happen, but it's happening to coincide with Comic-Con. So Marvel did something a little different, and they decided to host an evening. They always have a Saturday panel where they announce stuff, right? Like it's always you line up for like a day in advance, you camp out, you're super like, yeah, Marvel, and only the like hardest of the hardcore do that. I don't think. Have you ever lined up for Hall? No, you haven't, Kevin, have you? Lined
Nope.
up for Hall Age? Yeah, me neither.
Nope.
I've only done like daytime ones, like I could pop into like Pokemon Go in like 2016 or like the South Park panel, or I think I did the first Spider-Verse movie. I just kind of walked into it. Like it didn't have a lot of hype going into it. So, but never overnight. But Marvel was going to do something special. So Thursday night, they promised what was billed as only an hour-long event, a celebration of life of Deadpool and Wolverine. And they did it differently, where normally you have to line up for Hall H, like I was saying. But for Deadpool, they did an internet raffle, essentially. So you gave your email on a form in advance, and then they picked out of those emails who gets to go. And you had to have an email address and a name that matched your badge, and it had to have a Thursday badge, and then they would let you in, and then you go and you like get scanned in, and you're done in concept. So I didn't win it, and another guy in our group didn't win it, but you, Kevin, and our other friend won it. So it was one of the few times that all four of us that were there at the same time at Comic-Con were able to go to a thing together, which was really cool. Usually it's kind of like we mix and match and we pair up and we branch off, but it's really cool to like get to do that as a group. But as you were mentioning, it also had a 3.5 hour line, which it really shouldn't have. They said to line up at 4, and they'll scan your badge to confirm that you do in fact have a ticket. And that is not at all what happened. They had people just start lines. What?
Yeah, not even close to what happened.
Yeah, not even close. So just like people just started a line at like 2:30 or 3, from what I learned after the fact. We got online at 3:30 thinking we're savvy. We're gonna be half an hour early, ahead of the time they say. Nope, like 90 minutes early is what you really need if you want the front. But this line snaked like it was the single longest line I've ever seen at Comic-Con. It had to have been miles, like literally a mile or two long minimum.
By the time that it got to the end, yeah, and
by the end,
to the point where like this line, yeah, we're not joking.
It was crazy.
It eventually wrapped back to where we were standing.
Yeah.
And I remember people getting in line, and I'm like, girl, you are not getting into this panel. I don't know who you're fooling.
They were getting in line for a 6:30 panel that was 6 miles long. Yeah.
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 So that was wild.
It was a new experiment for Comic-Con, like doing this ticketed approach to Hall H, which is like the infamous Hall H. And yeah, it didn't work. So it worked for us. We got in with about 15 minutes to spare, fortunately, and we were kind of in like the back third of the venue, maybe. But like, we lined up before they said to line up, and we were already far back. And there are people who had tickets that said you're guaranteed to get in. Like, that's what the email said, and they just did not get in. And what ended up happening is, I guess originally, I like kind of looked stuff up after the fact. Originally, they were supposed to scan you as you get in line, starting at 4. People start just forming their own line at like 2 or 2:30, and Comic-Con security, which there's paid security and then there's volunteers that help sort of shepherd everyone. Those two groups were like, yeah, we're not going to be able to move this whole crowd and say that's not a real line. So they just made it the line, and they just changed the plan on the fly. And they initially were checking for the like scanning badges to confirm if people are legit. But it was going so slow and it was being so problematic, I guess, that they ended up just like kind of half-ass glancing at emails, being like, oh, yeah, that looks legit. So like for us, when we went, they did look at your email and say, okay, you have you, Kevin, and a +1, but some people, they didn't even look at the phones. Other people, they said, don't bother scanning. Like, it was just kind of a hodgepodge. A ton of people that probably weren't supposed to get in got in with just screenshots of the email, or if even that. And then a bunch of people who were promised to get in based on the email, they never made it in. So that was probably one of the messier Comic-Con moments. I mean, I know there's always pitfalls every year, you know, especially when they're trying something new, but that was probably one of the messiest. Like, I can't imagine how disappointed people were. Apparently, they were getting really like angry on the like outside when we were inside, and they started giving out popcorn buckets as apologies, and like people were like shouting at volunteers, which is not the volunteers' fault, and it was just a mess out there. But while that was happening, we were inside, and like I was alluding to, they gave us, as we walked in, we got like one of those Wolverine designed by Deadpool, quote unquote, popcorn buckets.
Which I have a complaint about mine.
Oh.
So so after security, you still had to walk it just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
To get your bucket. And of course, you know, not the volunteers' fault at all. But the volunteers are taking these buckets out of these big brown boxes, right?
Yeah. And putting them together.
And no, not putting them together. Not at all. They were not putting them together. They were already built.
Oh, I thought they were slapping the ears on. No?
No. They were already built, and they already had the waters in them.
Oh, yes, that's true. Which was the other thing that was inside, yeah.
So when I was given my popcorn bucket, the ear fell off, and she gave it to me, and she's like, and as she's lifting up the bucket out of the box, you hear the ear pop on my bucket.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Oh, whoops, here's the ear to your bucket." And I was like, okay, I guess it's not a big deal because they do snap on. Mine does not snap on at all.
No.
So I just have a
Wolverine.
one-eared Wolverine. They do snap on, but it's so bad.
That's a bummer.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Whole Comic-Con
what's the point on that?
No, but that is kind of a bummer. And it does speak to, I think, some of the organizational chaos around them trying to approach is like, you know, they should have figured out a way to ship the goodies better. They should have figured out a way to get the line better. Like, there's just, you could tell it was their first go at something like this. Because as we were walking up, there are just pallets of these boxes just full of these buckets, and they were just like all tossed in there. Yeah. So I guess it's not super surprising it happened, but it sucks it happened. But yeah, the bucket came, as you mentioned, with a water bottle. The water bottle is the one thing that's actually truly exclusive to our experience. It actually says on it, Hall H, Deadpool, Wolverine, Celebration of Life on the label. The other thing in the bucket was a little pin of like the two half-heart art of Wolverine and Deadpool, which was kind of cool. It might be exclusive. I don't know. But it was a nice little package. And then we get inside. We sit down. They start it like 20 minutes late because they're trying to let people catch up, do all the security issues. And yeah, out comes Ryan Reynolds, out comes Hugh Jackman, out comes the director Sean Levy and Kevin Feige of Marvel. And they have a panel table set up, and you know, we're all kind of speculating, you know, maybe they're gonna show the whole movie. They're probably gonna show the whole movie. It's opening night, and they do like a question or two, and then they cut to the actress that plays Blind Al on a video, and she's basically like, show the damn movie. So they just on the spot dismantle the panel table and start the movie, and it was actually a pretty cool moment, and the crowd of course went crazy. And then they handed out, just to show the scale of this, 6,500 people in Hall H. Row by row, they passed out popcorn for us to have while watching the movie. So the waves of how this went is you go in and you get some free stuff. And like, oh, this is cool. Out comes the cast and director. Oh, this is cool. Oh, surprise, we're showing you the movie. Oh, this is cool. Oh, wait, just not only are we showing you the movie, here's some popcorn for the movie. Oh, and then as that's all going on, they also, you know, they announced the popcorn. And then Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds are like, oh, we're watching it with you guys. And they literally go into the crowd, like up near the front, and sit there for the whole movie with the crowd. And then after the screening, and we'll talk about the movie in a minute, they go back up, and the two of them are like clearly pretty emotional, because how often do you get to watch your work with some of the most passionate fans in the world who are hooping and hollering and screaming, and it was an incredible way to watch the movie. Having also seen it in a regular theater since then, it was an incredible way to watch the movie. Yeah, and then they do like a little bit of a mini like sort of postmortem, and then they're just like, oh, we have some friends here, and they bring out all the cameos. Like the people, the actors. And then, as if that's not enough, it's just like, you know, keeps heightening. Then Kevin Feige's like, all right, that's all we got. But go outside and look to the sky. Look over Petco Park, which is the baseball stadium across the street, in about 25 minutes at 9:40. So, okay, we all go outside. I think you and Elvis at that point decide to go back to the room, right?
Yeah, we went back to the hotel.
Yeah, so our other friend and I, Victor and I, stayed. And we're like, okay, it's going to be a drone show. Sure, cool. Wasn't just a drone show. They used the rim of the baseball stand to launch fireworks, and anytime the drones had to change their configuration, I don't know how many people out there have seen a drone show. Drones are slow. They're very cool, but it takes them a minute to like get to their new shapes. So they would mask all that configuring with more fireworks, and at the very end, they did like a Fantastic Four tease, and they had Galactus, like made of drones, rise up out of the stadium, like this huge head, and then that faded out. And then next thing you know, they are using the drones to literally in the sky draw with fire the Fantastic Four logo. They had the drones shooting sparks off the backs. So it looked like they were literally just drawing with fire in the sky, and they made a huge Fantastic Four logo, and then the drones formed like a Hall H Saturday, which is where they, announced Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom and all that. But yeah, it was like just this increasingly cool experience. It's just like, okay, yeah, this is cool. Oh, now they're doing this. Oh, now they're doing this. Oh, now it just kept heightening. It was really, which is kind of how I felt about the movie too. I felt like, okay, this is cool. And then it kept like doing more and going beyond what I expected. And it was just a really cool experience. I mean, it felt like one of those things like people talk about that time in Hall H when they showed Deadpool and then like lit up the sky with fire. Like, it's one of those things that'll be like in the annals of Comic-Con, or like, oh, that one year they did that one thing. Like, it was really cool to get to finally be part of like a Hall H moment that's sort of like going to go down in history for Comic-Con, and it's a really fun experience. At least that was my take. I don't know how you felt about the whole thing.
About the whole experience? I mean, it was cool. Like, cool. They showed the movie. It was very nice of them to do, but it's not something that I personally am going to be like, man, that one time at Hall H, man, it's just ain't me.
No, that's fair. That's fair. What do you think? Well, I guess two things. Should we talk about the movie at all? Or should we continue going down Comic-Con?
I know. Let's keep going down Comic-Con.
Okay, and we could circle back to the movie maybe later in case anyone wants to bail on spoilers.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, so that was probably for me the peak of this year. But there's a lot of other cool stuff. I think it's worth. If I'm giving Marvel a spotlight, I want to give DC a spotlight. I think the Penguin experience that they put together was probably the coolest offsite this year. Basically, they took over a nightclub in downtown San Diego and they turned it into the Iceberg Lounge. But they you start by going into like they set it up so you're going into like a fake like Gotham subway. Like dingy subway station with like water leaking and like a rumbling subway that like shook the room, and they go in like a fake elevator that like takes you down to the Iceberg Lounge. It was all just screens and like a rumble on the floor, but it was all very well done and really like world building feeling. And there's every so often someone will come to Comic-Con with a really cool, real like authentic feeling, like almost theme park attraction style experience. And this year it was them. Past years, I know Angel, this is one you talked about before. The Blade Runner experience where they had us like go into like futuristic LA, and there were like all these actors around that were like, we had to figure out who was replicants, and they started where you're like wearing a VR headset and we take it off, suddenly you're in a different place because they had a hidden wall that would raise up. And like so they, in 1 year they did Severance, I think I talked about on the podcast, where they like literally shipped the sets out from the show. So they always do cool stuff like this. Or sometimes if you're lucky they do cool stuff like this.
Biggest one is probably the giant Bowser. Damn, that was so cool. What a way to! I mean, what a Comic-Con to pick from my last one. Yeah. I know that's not an activation, but
no, it was. But like, it was a photo op. It was literally a brand act. They wanted you to activate and take a picture with it.
Yeah, but it is like nice when like, something as specific as that, where it's like, oh, Bowser's my favorite character, and like there's like that one thing that just like is there that almost it feels like it's there for you. Just like I know, like you had like your Mr. Robots or
the Severance one, which is hands down my favorite offsite ever. That was I was literally using the computers from the set, like they
Scott
shipped it all
McNeil
out.
there.
Very cool. Do you just make up a name, Scott McNeil? Are you trying to say I'm Scott?
Travis Scott?
So I missed. Yes, Travis Scott was there rapping. No, I missed the cast by like 10 minutes. They did a walkthrough right as I was walking in the door. They already left, and all the staff was like, "Oh my god, they were just here," and I'm like, "Oh, cool, great." But I just missed them. But no, so this year for Penguin, they did this whole like immersive thing to get you in, and then once you were inside, it was a full-on nightclub, and they gave you drinks, and they the whole thing was themed around like I guess the Penguin's Enterprise in the new show is much like probably in the Batman movie. The underground drug scene of Gotham. So they have these drugs called drops, and there's like a room you could go in and get like a temporary tattoo of like a drop. But they were like dealers that would like try and like, you know, you had to kind of schmooze to get a drop, which was actually just like a pin of a logo, but it was in like a little fake like drug bag and stuff. And then you could go elsewhere and get a drink from the bar, and they had like little like lab droppers, like the, you know, those little plastic things you squeeze that had like a blue dye in it or something, so you get like this gin drink, and they could drop the drop in, and it would like, you know, kind of like make its way through the drink and look all like cool. And yeah, so they did that. But then separate from all that, and I also had really good hot dogs, surprisingly, but separate from all that, there was a speakeasy inside the Iceberg Lounge. Like Oswald's like little lounge was a hidden thing you could get into, so I had to figure out the password, which was printed on the inside of the napkins with the drinks, but you had to, you know to look. But you get the password, and then you go to the bouncer, and you wait, and you say the password, and you go in, and then you're in a whole different experience that had, like, real food, cigars, whiskey tastings, martinis, and, like, all this other stuff, and it was really elaborate. You could stay as long as you wanted. The whole thing was themed out, like, you know, it was, like, this classy kind of, like, loungy, you know, old-timey, like, Frank Sinatra-ish era. And, like, yeah, you're just, like, in that world, and you could just hang out there, and all the bartenders and the whiskey tasting guy and everything were all, like, in character. It was really cool. It was like you stepped into Gotham for a bit, and they didn't kick anyone out. You could stay as long as you wanted. Coincidentally, there's a Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy cosplaying pair that happened to be sitting next to me and Victor at the bar. So it was like, well, this is appropriate. So I got a picture of, like, you know, Harley sitting at the bar and all that. But, yeah, it was a really cool experience to, like, a really cool way to spend a Saturday night at Comic-Con. It's just like, it is both a legit, like, nightlife type of thing, but also a really cool themed experience. So those are probably the two bookends for me of, like, highlights. But the fun thing at Comic-Con, I feel like, is there's always so many other things. Like, you got to do the Borderlands bar, right, Kevin?
Yeah, the Borderlands bar
Moxie's?
was really, really cool, actually. Yeah, Moxie's bar.
Yeah.
Man, Moxie's bar was really, really cool. As soon as you walk in, you get one free drink token, and then as soon as you walk in, it's like really, really cool. Like, I would suggest anybody to try and, like, look up photos of it from the inside.
It's well themed. Yeah.
Yeah. They have like
for the movie.
Absolutely not. That movie looks atrocious.
But they were pushing it so hard at Comic-Con. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they know that nobody wants to see that movie. So.
Yep.
But as soon as you walk in, there's like a little claptrap that's supposed to be like DJing the whole thing. Everybody was in character, obviously. So you had the bartenders in character. There was a dunk tank, where if you dunked the Psycho Bandit that was in the tank or above the tank, if you dunked him, you got another free drink. And there was no limit on how many times you could do that, so you could theoretically just be drinking all day. Yeah. Not only that, but like the distance that you had to throw was like probably like less than 3 feet.
Yeah.
To hit the target. It wasn't like you had to be a baseball player. Like, you could, and not only that, but it was very, very touchy. So there was a couple of people that didn't even like hit the what would you call it? Hit the not the button. What would you call it? The target?
It was basically a button you were hitting in the middle of a target. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just target. Like, some people would just like miss the target completely, and it would still trigger it. And then there was like 2 kiosks where you could demo what looked like Borderlands 1 to me from a distance. I couldn't really tell,
PC, the screens on the other side of the bar that had like chairs with them. Yeah, I don't know what
it looked like. It looked like Borderlands 1 to me, which is very weird considering there's 4 other Borderlands games that have been out since then. Or actually more than 4. And then there was like a slot machine, where I guess like depending on what you, what would you call it? What you roll?
Yeah, it was like total luck of the draw in terms of like you press a button and it just, it rolls whatever. And some people win shirts and some people win a drink and some people like me won nothing. So
yeah, that I didn't do the slot machine, but I mean, people were having fun in there. It was really, really cool. It was really well done.
Yeah, and that's what's so cool about also weird thing before I even say that. dunk tanks were apparently the theme this year, because not only did Moxie's have one for Borderlands, over behind the convention center, they recreated, if anyone's watched Abbott Elementary, Ava Fest from Abbott Elementary. They full-on made Ava Fest like a thing. So in the show, if you're not familiar, it's a fundraiser for the school. It's like kind of half carnival, half fundraiser. And they basically made a giant carnival behind the convention center. It had like a big swing ride. It had all these different things themed around different characters. So there's like a hammer where you try and hit the bell, hit the thing up to the bell. And that was like Miss Teague's like Reach for the Stars, because she's always like aspirational and motivational. And then they had like a dunk tank for one of the teachers. And yeah, it wasn't like the most unique thing because it was basically a carnival. But they did a really good job of theming it, which is always what's fun about Comic-Con, is like, tying it into stuff. If you know the show, if you know the IP, if you know Borderlands, if you know Gotham, whatever, like Batman, it's fun to see how it's all tied together and how they put a little bow on it and make it more like immersive as a result. But it was weird that there were 2 dunk tanks in the same year. But yeah, and I got a nice hat. Actually, Ava Fest was getting out some good swag. I got a very I've been using it. It's a for those who've seen the show, Fade, which is their like riff on Dare, the Dare program. It's a cap with a a Fade patch on, and I got one of the last ones in stock. But yeah, that's the other thing. Swag is also often pretty good at Comic-Con. The hat was nice. Over at the IMDb boat, I got a Wolverine oven mitt because DiGiorno had like Deadpool pizzas. There's some like decent swag. And one of the cool things this year actually was can't believe I'll say the sentence Funko and cool in the same, but Funko they did a pop vinyl thing where you can make a pop of yourself called Pop Yourself. But they had it like you're a cosplayer as Deadpool or Wolverine, and you have like a little lanyard on the figurine that has like it's not really Comic-Con because I don't think they got the license to use the real Comic-Con thing, but it's basically a Comic-Con logo, and they had like little accessories, and it was a neat little thing, and you just you stood at the booth and then you scanned a QR code and you're able to like build your pop, and they built it in the back of the booth. I don't know how they manage inventory. It was just bags of loose pieces of pops, but they somehow did it. And yeah, like an hour later, I got like a custom figurine of myself, kind of. I mean, it's pops, so there's only so much visual unique identity you can have on those things, but it was pretty cool. And then on the other side of the fence there, Upper Deck let you make a custom like X-Men trading card of yourself, which was kind of fun. But yeah, the thing is, I would say Moxie's is pretty quick to get into, right?
Yeah, it was no longer than 20 minutes.
Yeah, for me, it
both
was
times that I went, it was no longer than 20 minutes.
Oh, you went twice? Nice.
I went with my other buddies.
Oh, gotcha. Nice. Yeah, like one of the nice things in my command center is I was able to get tickets with time slots. So, like Iceberg Lounge, I think I waited 10 minutes. Moxie's was super quick. But on the flip side, one of the downsides of Comic-Con, as we were alluding to at Deadpool, sometimes the lines are really like long, and not every experience is necessarily worth the line. So it is kind of I wouldn't call it a crapshoot, because I would say more often than not skews on the side of good and worthwhile. But occasionally you get some that aren't, or some that you have to make a judgment of like, do I want that swag? Like Hulu had one where you get like a fanny pack and go through this whole experience and do stuff from the shows of Animayhem, like, Solar Opposites and American Dad and all that. And if you're into those, cool. But the one that I think Kevin, you already alluded to, we tried to do the FX experience.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Do you want to touch on what that was like? Because that was something.
It was miserable. We got to the line maybe around what time? I believe it might have been like 9:30.
9:30, yeah.
Like 9:30 a.m. to get in line, because there was an activation for the bear inside of the FX activation.
Yeah. Random Nintendo's favorite show, The Bear. Yes.
Yeah, winner of 2023's Quarantini, yes sir.
And Emmys, but really Quarantini is what matters.
Yeah, the Quarantini is what matters the most.
100%.
So there was we got there at 9:30. Luckily, we were in the shade, and then eventually, when the activation opened at 10 o'clock, the line started moving, and we were still in the shade for like a decent amount of it. But then eventually we got to the non-shaded part of this line.
Yeah.
And of course, once we're in this non-shaded line, or this non-shaded part of the line, is when everything decided to slow down to a crawl. where we were moving maybe, I don't know, 3 feet every.
Like 10 minutes.
What would you say? No, I feel like it was like every 20 minutes.
Maybe. I will. Yeah, it was. I think what happened is, so we got there before it technically opened, so there was a rush of people that gotta go in right when it opened, and then they're at capacity and could only drip feed us in. So that's when it really slowed down. But we were in the sun at that point, and then it was like 3 feet every 20.
Yeah, and so then eventually we get inside, and there's 2 activations in there, or I guess there's 3 activations, 3 plus a photo op.
Yeah.
And they were the bear activation where it looked like a small like part of the bear's kitchen, with people like giving you items, and we'll talk about those items. Then there's an activation for a Elevator, which is I guess American Horror Story's new season or the upcoming season.
Or just someone on the marketing team liked puns and was like, what if we just show footage in a fake elevator and called it an elevator? I don't know if that's actually like the name of the season or not, but yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's it was branded AHS Elevator.
Oh yeah, no, it's for sure AHS related. Yeah.
And and like I said, I'm pretty sure that's the next season.
Okay, yeah,
or maybe not. Whatever. But that one had no line, or I mean, it had a line, but it was like 20 people at most.
Yeah, but even then, it said, I think where we were standing when we briefly thought we'd do it, it was still 30 minutes for 20 people because it can only fit a handful in said elevator at a time. So. Yeah.
So then we get to the bear line where, whereas we stated, was everybody, because everybody wanted to be,
everyone loves the bear.
Wanted to do the bear stuff. Everybody loves the bear. The guy goes, as soon as we walk into the line, by the way, this is a 4-hour wait. And we were like, dog, no, there's we
were like,
no
haha,
way.
Good one, yeah.
Good one, G. Yeah. There's absolutely zero way. And we did the math, and it was like, yep, this is going to be a 4-hour wait. Absolutely not. Let's get out of here. I love the bear. I do not love the bear that much to wait 4 hours for possibly a T-shirt that says FX the bear on it.
Yeah.
I can just go on Etsy and get an original Burf shirt.
That was the thing to start pointing out. So they marketed it as like there's a daily chef special at the Bear pop-up, and we maybe naively, when we first saw that news, a few of us were definitely like, oh, they're gonna have like food, like obviously it'll be like something like quick and dirty. It's not just gonna be a sit-down meal. Although last year Pop-Tart did a full multi-course meal in the Adult Swim booth. But anyway, but yeah, so we're like, oh, maybe it's like a food thing, and then we get there, it's like, oh, it's just different merch that's presented with a dish being lifted in front of you. Which nothing against the merch. There was an apron one day. There's a bandana one day, like Sydney wears, like similar style. Like there was some cool stuff, but 4 hours, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So then we went.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, after that we went to the third activation, which was, you got an umbrella.
Yep.
Customized with, I think it was like 14 characters at most. No profanity. It had to be approved, and then you could get like a little. They had like 6 different.
Almost like emoji insignia things.
Yeah, emojis that you could choose from. That had nothing to do with any of the shows that were on display at this activation, which made no sense. I
will say in the defense of the umbrellas. Besides, it's nice to have an umbrella in the heat. They were like sun parasols basically, but they had the umbrellas where you pick your phrase and stuff were like hand calligraphy by like a team of like tattoo artists or something. Yeah,
absolutely no disrespect to the umbrellas. I just thought it was ridiculous
it was ridiculous. Yeah.
They didn't have any like emojis that had to do with the show, like not a chef's hat, not a
frying pan,
bear, like
anything,
not absolutely nothing. I think they were more like the lightning bolts reminded me, like, I guess, that might be like a Sunny reference. But like,
like it's a stretch, but yeah.
You have your activations here. Like, do something. I'm like, not even like a samurai sword for Shogun, like nothing. Well, it was like a lightning bolt, a butterfly,
spider.
What? A spider, a heart,
a rain cloud. Or no, that was a lightning bolt.
That was a lightning bolt.
Palm tree.
Oh, a palm tree. Yeah, it was just a weird assortment of little emojis.
And the funny thing is, I feel like FX usually has done But so the thing we maybe didn't make clear is you had a line just to get into the FX area, and then you had lines to each individual thing. We kind of touched on that. But in the past, FX was really good about just like letting you walk in. And so I don't really know why they had lines just to get to lines. And also there's some irony in we waited 3 hours in the sun to get shade, essentially, to get the umbrella.
Probably had to do something with the fact that they knew how popular the activation was. Because this was Saturday.
That's true. It was Saturday morning. That's a very good point.
They've already had at least 2 days of that before.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of touched on this, but that's some of the like hit or miss nature of some of these offsites. Like you stand in line, you have to assess. But then other times there's stuff like things pop up you don't expect. Like Apple TV Silo did like a random little like temporary tattoo parlor. But then there's also like there's a Planet of the Apes like museum thing for the franchise that was kind of cool, and they had like old costumes, and then like they had like you could like meet a hawk. Because I guess there's the hawk in the new one, so it's like, oh, you can like meet a real hawk, and it's just like one of those things. Like, well, I don't know if I go on my way to this, but it's here at Comic-Con. I have half an hour to wait in line, so let's meet a hawk. So like, yeah, it's just such an eclectic mix of things at Comic-Con, good and bad, mostly good. But yeah, I think. Were any other highlights you wanted to?
I walked into the Shaun of the Dead experience thing for all of 5 minutes.
That bad?
Not necessarily that it was that bad, but it was really hot in there.
Oh.
And it was maybe, I don't know, it was definitely like just a bar that was retrofitted to look like the Winchester. It was cool. Like, hey, there's the rifle. Hey, there's the zombie in the jukebox.
Right.
But like once you see it, it's like, all right, cool, yeah.
And on to
let me get my free beer and let me go on to the next thing.
Right, and it is worth knowing there's a lot of like actual things in Comic-Con as well. Like it's not just about like I got to go to the Bob's Burgers panel, which was the first time I got to see the cast of that panel. I did go last year, but the strike, there was no panel. It was just a screening, it turned out. But yeah, so like there's cool opportunities like that. Like it's just a fun few days in general. Like just like to just like consume all the culture, all the nerd culture, all the pop culture, except gaming. There was I should be fair. There was some gaming, but like that was the thing I noticed was really kind of like missing was just like in the past there was such a presence. Nintendo was there, PlayStation was there, Xbox was there, Blizzard was there, Ubisoft would always have like these massive offsites and activations. Not really any of them this year. I mean, even Capcom's booth was just like Udon selling merch. And Blizzard Spot, I should be fair. Blizzard Spot was replaced by Hoyoverse, who was promoting ZZZ, and they also had a sponsored rooftop party with IGN on Friday night that I managed to win my way into. And they put a lot of money into all that because the bartender was telling me at that party, the open tab that Hoyoverse and IGN paid for was $32,000 of just the drinks, never mind the other stuff going on, like the live music. So it's not like these, gaming wasn't spending at the show, but it definitely wasn't what it used to be. Like Nintendo kind of had a presence, like just to bring it back to Nintendo a little, since this is Random Nintendo. They had a Pokemon booth, which I guess was more Pokemon Company. It was mostly focused on like Pokemon Horizons, the new TV series. They had like photo ops and these tote bag giveaways. But they did have Switches. They had a whopping 3 Switches in the back of the booth along the back wall, and they were demoing Scarlet and Violet. Very, very timely of them to be demoing that game. But yeah, I feel like, Nintendo in particular, like used to have such a big presence, in past years. They'd take over the ballroom next door at the Marriott. They'd essentially bring E3, like their whole E3 lineup with them to Comic-Con. And it's like night and day from that to now them just not being there. They sort of scaled down. Like they had the Lego Bowser that Angel you were talking about. They had that one year along with like something in a parking lot. But yeah, it's interesting how little of a footprint gaming has now versus 5, 6, 7 years ago. I do think, thinking about it, I think E3 is probably partly to blame for, or a big part of the reason that there's this gaming gap. Like, it was super easy for companies to take whatever demo and marketing materials they compiled for E3 and just like recycle them, I guess, for Comic-Con. This time it'd be much more public facing than E3, but it's a good way for them. They invest in one, they get the other. Nintendo in particular would always reuse a lot of their same booth setups and photo ops and marketing materials, the same exact demos often. And if there's no E3, you're not really, like, if you're not spending months of time and mountains of money and diverting resources to make these perfect pre-release demos because you need them for E3 and these fancy booths and fancy statues because you need them for E3. I don't think you're going to do those for just Comic-Con by itself, if you're a game company. Like, you know, they don't need to hire people to man the demo stations. They don't need to deal with the shipping of the demo units. Like, Comic-Con was probably a value add for gaming, and E3 was the main spend, and if E3 is not there, you know, the cost-value assessment shifts in a direction that I guess most companies clearly were not interested in still pursuing. So it was kind of interesting to see how gaming just, like, completely sort of bounced out of Comic-Con as quickly as it did. And that, yeah, as someone that, you know, gaming was one of the things I was always like, yeah, like even merch, like there's not a whole lot of Nintendo merch. Like Mattel used to have some exclusives. They got nothing this year that was Nintendo related. So that was kind of interesting. It didn't dampen the experience too much because there's so much other stuff to do. But I thought it was kind of interesting that like gaming definitely took a back seat after, like there used to be a whole corner of the convention center floor that was just all video games. And technically that's where Pokemon was, and that's where Horioverse was, and that's where Udon's Capcom merch was. But what was once like 5, 6, 7 booths was like 3. 2 of which didn't actually have any video games. So minus the 3 Switches for Scarlet and Violet. Sorry, 3 Switches. But yeah, so that was kind of interesting. And I think it's also interesting because Nintendo is like in a rather unique position versus some of like their industry pals, their industry compatriots at this point. Like to pivot a bit, if you guys don't mind, to pivot a bit into a financial report Nintendo just put out this past Friday. The Switch, like they're in a weird spot with the Switch, and I think that's partly why they sort of bailed on Comic-Con. Like the Switch's sales are understandably notably slowing. We're talking like hardware sales in Q1 of this year, so like April 1st to June 30th, they were down 46% compared to Q1 of 2023. Software is down like 41%. And some of that, to be fair, like you can't replicate last Q1 2023. Like there's no way Nintendo would have the momentum of the Mario movie and Tears of the Kingdom back to back again this year. Like that's just not, there's just not, it's not feasible. And there's no like possible way to match the insane profits that made them. You know, it was their highest Q1 ever. Their Q1 this year, like operating profits were down like 70% and net profits were down like 55%. Like they're still making money, but it's not the scale they were before. But I think a lot of this slowdown also stems from the fact that the Switch is in its 8th year in the market. And I think the type of consumer who tends to be at Comic-Con, even if they bring their family along for like Nintendo to be able to go like, oh, look at Mario Kart, look at Kirby. Like, you know, that demographic of people are probably more the early adopter type. They're probably more the enthusiast audience. So like E3's death aside, if there ever was a time for Nintendo to step back from Comic-Con, as much as I kind of missed them, even though I still had plenty to do, you know, if there was a time for them to like step back and kind of reassess how they position their products for the next little while, I would think it would be now, like at the tail end of the Switch's life. So it kind of makes sense they're not there on multiple levels. But like to frame this whole thing perhaps a little differently, so the Switch is at a point right now where Nintendo sold 2.1 million units of Switch in Q1 of this year. And for the full fiscal year, so for the next 9 months, they want to sell a total, for the last 3 plus the next 9, for the full 12 months, they want to sell 13.5 million. So in the next 9 months, they got to figure out how to move 11.4 million units of a system that's 8 years old and has already sold 143 million units, which is an insane number that's like approaching PS2 and DS. Like it's like one of the biggest systems ever. And they kind of need to figure out some new angle and probably not going to Comic-Con and spending the money elsewhere because, in not so many words, like the Switch is the holding pattern for Nintendo right now. Like they need to make some profit while they finish up the Switch 2, while so many of their IP expansion plans are being worked on. Like if you look at their financial report, it's funny, their slide deck, it's like, here's all the stuff coming like way later, like Donkey Kong at Super Nintendo World, our museum, our new stores, our new movies, Switch 2. Although they don't name Switch 2 specifically, but it's like, okay, yeah, so that's in the future. Cool. Thanks, guys. Like they have nothing short term except just keeping this holding pattern with the Switch and putting out a little bit of content. So that this is what's keeping their profits going. So again, I guess it kind of makes sense that if the Switch isn't going to sell to people who already own a Switch, they're at Comic-Con, which is probably a lot of people at Comic-Con, then yeah, they're not going to be at Comic-Con. I think if you look at how Nintendo is like marketing the Switch this year, I feel like I'm sort of rambling, but if you look at how Nintendo's marketing the Switch this year, where they're marketing it, what games they're marketing, I think it's an interesting pivot away from like us, like our type of consumer, like the early adopter, the enthusiasts, the fans, the gamers. Like they're still giving us games because they got to keep the core fan base happy and engaged, or risk losing us to competing platform and then having that gap that they have to try and make up in the future. So we're still getting cool, smaller scale fan servicey stuff. I mean, we didn't even talk about it when it was announced, but Emio, the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club, first new game in like 30 years in that franchise. That's pretty fan servicey. That's not something that's going to move systems. That's something for the people who own a Switch and are invested and are kind of the demographic they're not marketing to as much right now. It does look kind of cool. I mean, did Angel, I imagine it's up your alley, right? Emio, the Famicom Detective Club, I guess
cool. I mean, it has my attention. Probably once all 3 games go on sale together. I'm surprised there wasn't any kind of discount for the other ones or any kind of promotion.
Yeah, that was so weird that they had an opportunity to like get more people in the door.
It's caught my eye.
Yeah, but like that's the type of thing that like they're not going to show it at they're not going to spend money to put at Comic-Con, but it's something to kind of keep us warm, you know. So like kind of I guess back to the bigger point I was trying to make is like Emio is very much for us, and they've got some stuff that's a little more broad, you know, Super Mario Party Jamboree, Mario and Luigi Brothership. They're surely going to catch the eye of people who already have a Switch, but like I don't think they're going to move Switches, right? Like, is a third Mario Party on Switch going to be a system seller that the first 2 weren't or already were? Like, those people already have a Switch. Who is this one for except existing owners? Or, like, Mario and Luigi, third Mario RPG in a single year on Switch. I don't see how that's going to move units in this measurable way. Those 140 million people who own it, there's a subset that are going to love it. I can't see very many people being like, well, now that Brothership is coming out, I got to get in on the Switch. Like that in and of itself isn't going to do it, you know? And I think actually the best example of all this is about how, like, you know, they have these games, but they're not system sellers at this point, is actually Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which this morning, this was a fresh consideration for me because this morning, as of this recording, they put out a new trailer that really shows a lot of the game. Did you guys see this? The like 5.5 minute like travel through Hyrule teaser gameplay explanation thing?
No.
It did. It was kind of interesting just how, you know, the original trailer is like, oh, cool, you could copy things. And I'm like, all right, where's this going? It's like, oh, okay, this is like a fun puzzle game kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then this one gave me the same kind of like surprise vibe. Like, oh, damn. Like, you know, it started simple, like, okay, yeah, like, this looks like it's just going to make some things easy. Then it's like, oh, damn, I don't even think it would have even occurred to me to use, you know, a spider this way or whatever insect that we're using to demo climb on anything.
Right.
Like, it's interesting. I'm definitely curious to see, because, you know, it's not like, I don't know, yeah, it's not like Breath of the Wild where...
But it kind of is.
I guess it is. I mean,
like literally the menus
scaled down tremendously.
The menus are Breath of the Wild menus. Like it's straight up.
Yeah, it's just a. I guess it's going to be a more streamlined Breath of the Wild, or since you know, I see a mountain I want to climb. Oh, that's going to take me at least a couple hours, but you pretty much know what you're doing the whole time. And this one, it's like, oh, I want to see if I can climb that mountain. See what combination you could figure out. That's probably going to be the bulk of your time, and then just do it.
Yeah, the whole. I don't know. It looks fun. Don't get me wrong, but
not sure if I'm gonna buy it yet. But at the very least, I think it's really cool.
The whole thing reminds. I know I was saying it's like a fresh consideration in my mindset. Like this isn't a game to sell a Switch; it's a game to sell people who own a Switch. Like sell it to people who own a Switch is because like, do you guys remember in the Wii era? They used to do this thing where, like, they would draw people in deeper with, like, familiarity. Like, they build a bridge into, like, more experiences of the same. Like, Nintendo would be like, okay, well, we'll get the casuals in with Wii Sports. And then we're going to get them a little bit deeper into gaming with Wii Sports Resort. And then they're going to become real gamers. And they're going to take those motion controls and they're going to roll bombs and Skyward Sword. Because I don't know if you guys remember when they promoted Skyward Sword, they kept being like, you roll the bomb like you do a bowling ball. As in like, hey, Wii Sports fans, this game is that, but deeper. Check it out. Like, I feel like that bridge building kind of, and to be fair, that kind of worked. The number of people that had Wii Sports and then like went on to Wii Sports Resort, I think like 40% of the Wii Sports player base bought Wii Sports Resort, or like 40% of the total number of sales or something. So like it was like it worked. Like they got people to go like a step further. They were able to sell to people who already sold to essentially. And I think with Echoes of Wisdom, while it's obviously not like casual decor, like you're getting more serious in your gaming, that bridge, like I 100% see how they're looking at all those people who bought and somehow are still buying Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and are seeing an opportunity to basically sell them on like a familiar but now different in a little way, but still very familiar Echoes of Wisdom. Like the menu, I was saying this when you were talking, Andrew, but like the menus are like identical. The UI is like identical. The echoes and using them for like this free form puzzle thing, like you're describing, while different in terms of how you do the puzzles, like you're saying, same concept at the end of the day of like a sandbox of tools. Like you don't have an item per dungeon. You have any item you want to use any which way, and you kind of mix and match to your heart's content. Like that whole like hook is here. They have this bind mechanic and reverse bond mechanic, which is you can like pick up and move things as needed or attach to already moving things. And that's like, come on, that's like that's like Diet Ultra Hand, like even down to the green glow effect. They talked about making smoothies. That's cooking, the cooking system scaled down a little. Like this game is through and through a gateway into 2D Zelda for folks who maybe only got into Zelda Breath of the Wild, or maybe for folks who were used to 2D Zelda, really like what they've done with more modern 3D Zelda, and now are going to be into that being applied back to 2D Zelda. Like it's very much a game that I feel like isn't necessarily going to move Switches, but it's very catered to the 30 million plus of people who loved the 3D Zeldas on Switch and now can do a 2D version of that. And it looks great. This isn't a knock against it. It's a really clever approach, but I think it really speaks to like there's an element here where Nintendo, I think, is recognizing they can't just be like, come check out the Switch to people who would normally be their audience because we all have it already. So like, and they did, in their defense, they have the Hylian edition Switch Lite, but also, to my point, Nintendo keeps saying at this point they're not trying to sell Switches to necessarily new people, but also to people who already have Switches. They want multiple per household. And what better way to do that than get all the Zelda fans who love a Switch and probably already have Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and a Switch to double dip on the Switch with a special edition Switch Lite. So it all kind of, yeah. So going back to like, I guess my broader point of Nintendo not Comic-Con, somehow this all spun out of that. And how they're going to get 11 million Switches sold. I don't know how much of their game lineup is catered to the goal of selling Switches in and of itself right now. Like, I don't know how much them showing these games at Comic-Con would have gotten them closer to selling more Switches right now. And I don't know how much of their marketing from here on out is going to be towards folks like us either. I think going after early adopters and enthusiasts and launching big AAA games and all that stuff is now reserved for Switch 2. And Switch 1's kind of entering like its budget area, budget era, which is why we're not necessarily seeing it in places we used to see it marketed, like Comic-Con. I would guess we'll probably be seeing a lot of bundles and maybe some price drops this fall and holiday. I wouldn't even be surprised if we see Nintendo Selects come back as like a budget line. I mean, certainly some games don't need it. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe somehow sold almost 1 million copies this past quarter all by itself again. So that will never be a Nintendo Select. But, the smaller successes, the Mario Sports, the Pikmins, the Kirbys, the Splatoons, I could see those having a lower entry point. That being a good way to like gin up some sales numbers. If you're tapped out of a market of people who would pay the full price, then you can make a whole marketing move around. It's more affordable, for people who either didn't want to pay the full price or couldn't pay the full price. And those people who would be interested in a Nintendo Select of a 3-year-old game that they can get cheaper are not the people that would be at Comic-Con wanting to check out the latest and greatest thing, and probably why Nintendo isn't there. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think, where Switch goes from here, where Nintendo goes from here, at least until Switch 2. I think the fall is like crystal clear in terms of what we can expect as Switch owners. There's going to be some cool, albeit smaller scale games. But for like Nintendo's overall approach to Switch, I think it's firmly not pointed anywhere near our direction anymore, outside maybe the Hylian Switch Lite. And I think that is a big part of why at least Nintendo wasn't at Comic-Con. And I think that, with that huge detour, was my last thought on Comic-Con. But I don't know, Kevin, you have any more thoughts on Comic-Con?
No.
Should we talk
I'll leave it at that.
Deadpool?
We can.
Okay. Or do we want to well, Angel, do you care about spoilers for Deadpool? Do we want to talk? I see there's 2 things on the list. So, Kevin, your host, you choose.
Wait, say that again?
Yeah, I was saying you can pick our next talk because we have Deadpool and we have Game Informer. So, whichever one you guys want to do first.
We can do Game Informer.
Okay. So,
Rest in peace, Game Informer.
yep, next topic. No, that was rough, the way they shut that down.
Thought you were gone a long time ago when you were being forced down
Oh, hey, Angel's
our
here.
throats with
Angel
what was it? GameStop?
Yeah, GameStop, and that's who shut it down unceremoniously.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember why they gave me Game Informer. I think I just wanted one Game Informer,
Because they had to
and they
upsell
gave
it.
me the whole year by force.
No, because they had to upsell it. It was part of their commit. It was part of their like pay.
I'll give it that for the year that I did have it, I think it was it a Breath of the Wild year? I think Breath of the Wild 1 was still a thing.
You had that recently?
God, that was a while
Switch
ago.
era, like 2017?
I want to say yes. Maybe. I don't
I also
remember.
realize that's not that recent,
It was-
but yeah.
Yeah, it was semi-ish recently. I mean, yeah, that's like, what, 4, 5, 6, like 7 years ago?
7 going on 8.
Yeah. But I'll give it that, like, there is still something nice about, like, even on this day and age, it's still nice holding a tangible magazine and flipping it through, no matter
totally.
what it was.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever found any articles that I latched onto. I mainly just looked at the images. I didn't even really read the reviews. So outside of the covers, that was pretty much it. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's all I really knew about Game Informer.
Yeah, it seems like that's all some people at GameStop knew, the way they shut it down. So, it's very... So on Friday, it was Friday, right? Like Friday morning, Game Informer tweeted, not by the staff, maybe written by AI, basically like, all right, we're done. Farewell. They didn't get a farewell issue. The issue currently in production is the last one that's going to ship. They deleted the entire website and all its archives. There was like an ongoing cross-marketing deal with Dragon Age Vanguard that I guess like, oh well, that's not going to get finished. And GameStop just like unceremoniously like pulled the plug very abruptly. The tweet went out before some of the staff even knew. It was rough. It was like for a magazine that's like 30 plus years old, it really did not respect what it did for GameStop, what it did for the industry, what it did for video game, conversation and hype and marketing cycles. Like you would think a store that sells video games would at least give a little bit of a proper goodbye to the thing that helped them sell their video games. But it was very abrupt. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, did you ever really read it, Kevin?
Oh yeah, I was subscribed to it.
How many years? Like forever?
Can't tell you how many years I would subscribe to it. Don't know if it was 1 year and then 1 year off and then a year again, but yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being subscribed to Game Informer. I subscribed to a lot of gaming magazines back in the day.
Me too. Me too.
Game Informer was one of them for sure. There was, I forget which one it was. It was which one was it? It was the one where their writers had like, it wasn't actually like
The EGM?
the writers
GamePro?
using their names and
Oh,
their
GamePro.
GamePro. Yeah, that's right. Because they had Lame Pro. Yeah,
Yep.
it was like GamePro, Game Informer, and I think like official PlayStation Magazine at some point.
Nice. Yeah, I did. I had Nintendo Power, naturally. I had Nintendo Power, EGM, Game Informer, briefly GamePro, because I got it for free somehow for a number of years. And I would also, at Barnes & Noble, pick up a British GameCube magazine called Cube that often came with little DVDs. So I had like a rotation of like 5, which is funny because I only was playing Nintendo stuff. But I was still reading all the other stuff. It was interesting. I guess it fits me. I was very plugged into the industry. Like I had all these different magazines. But yeah, Game Informer, I had like a very vivid memory when they had the first information on Red Steel for what was then the Revolution, the next month, the Wii. And they had like first screenshots, which it turns out were kind of guzzied up and then photoshopped. They had first information on like how the nunchuck and the Wiimote worked together, like because that game was using it. They had an interview with like a Nintendo senior executive. I think it was George Harrison, the marketing executive at the time, not the Beatle, who was like talking up the revolution and what it will be. And it was so exciting to like, oh man, this crazy system, and here's the first information. I was really into that issue, and I vividly remember it. And then the next month, I think EGM had a huge thing on Twilight Princess on the Wii and stuff. And I just remember like that double whammy. It was so fun getting gaming magazines. Like you just open your mailbox and there's like, whoa, what's this? I mean, the internet kind of squashed some of that, even in the era I'm talking about. Like some of it leaked, but like I have such a fond memory of like opening the May 1999 Nintendo powered. It had like Episode 1 pod racing on the cover, and it had this huge spread about like E3, and I read through the whole magazine front to back in like a single sitting because it was so cool. And that was like the first time I like really knew about E3. Yeah, it's gaming magazines were something special, and I realize it's somewhat replicated by the internet, but yeah, it just sucks that, I mean, obviously it's a dying format, but it just sucks that like they didn't get a proper send off. Like all the others did, as far as I recall. I think GamePro did, Nintendo Power certainly did, but the fact that Game Informer is just sort of like disrespected that way really kind of sucks.
Yeah. That's it sucks. There's a couple of writers on there that eventually went on to go do other things that like I followed. Dan Riker and Jason Nastryker were from Game Informer, and they moved over to Giant Bomb.
I forgot Dan Riker was Game Informer. That's right. Yeah.
And then I mean like Game Informer was for the longest time was ran by Andy McNamara. And I think he works at EA now.
I believe so.
I think he's like he's part of their like not their PR team, but he's essentially their like he's part of like their comms team, I think now.
Yeah, and I think he's the one that helped shepherd the final cover story for Game Informer of Dragon Age because the EA Game Informer connection there through him. Yeah.
And then who else? I mean, I followed a couple of them once they jumped ship from because I was starting to listen to the Game Informer podcast a lot just because the personalities on there were like I enjoy them, and then a bunch of them jumped ship. And they started their own Patreon with MinMax, and I still listen to that from time to time. Like, Game Informer did have like some solid people on that team.
They did. I feel like they kind of flew under the radar a little compared to some. Like they were never like Game Informer was always like. I feel like the perception was always like, oh, it's the thing GameStop tries to like push on you when you buy a game, but they had like really quality stuff. It was also very strange they were in like Minneapolis of all places. Like I feel like so much of the gaming industry is like San Francisco, LA, West Coast, Seattle, and then they were just like out in the Great Lakes, just chilling in the cold. But it worked for them. Right. Yeah.
So, rest in peace, Game Informer.
Yeah. Unfortunate end, but you know, at least they had a really good run. 33 years is like actually quite impressive. Yeah.
I would love to have Edge be publicated here in the States.
You can pick it up for like $8 an issue from like Barnes and Noble.
Oh, really?
I think I've gotten some issues at Barnes and Noble. Maybe not anymore, but back when I used to pick up Cube in like 2003, like I would also get Edge from time to time. Edge has such nice like art direction. Yeah, it feels so classy.
And Game Informer, especially during the redesign, also had
they had
really good art
really
direction.
Nice look. Yeah.
So, but rest in peace, Game Informer.
Rest in peace. And hopefully all those writers there. I know there's a guy who had like a Nintendo podcast that it was super like he did like a 45 questions or something with Miyamoto, or just like rapid fire questions. I think it was Miyamoto. Maybe it was Anuma. But I hope they all land on their feet because they have some like fun original content and ideas. So fingers crossed for them. So. But yeah, kind of a bummer to have that. Oh, here's something crazy I learned about Game Informer, courtesy of Jeff Keighley. Game Informer was such a big deal and had so much influence in the industry that companies would negotiate with Game Informer for the cover stories to the point where they would not show games at E3 so they could have the world exclusive in Game Informer. I forgot which game it was and which company, but there's a company that completely skipped showing a game at E3 just so it could be in Game Informer in July so they could get the world exclusive cover because they knew the reach because of the GameStop distribution of it all was that much more impactful, which is crazy if you stop and think about it. But yeah, that was the power of Game Informer in its prime. Yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
I guess we can talk a little bit about Deadpool Wolverine.
Yeah, so spoilers at this point?
Yeah, sure.
Just in case anyone's not wanting to know any spoilers. I feel like this movie in particular, the internet did not give any regard to people not seeing it yet. Like, I feel like there was clips, there were screenshots, like the press circuit, like everything within like a day was already spilled everywhere. Like there were headlines on like Entertainment Weekly that just like said the cameos. It was in the headline. It was very strange.
Yeah, and they and I think they finally did the official reveal Channing Tatum as Gambit.
Yeah. Well, he posted it on his socials on like the Saturday of opening weekend.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I saw it and I was like, oh, you know what? I kind of want to say something about this. So I was going to quote tweet it. And I was like, no, like just because he posted it out and he like further propagate the spoiler, I won't. But it was just like, yeah, like it was, I mean, granted, Marvel sort of set it up to be like that because, you know, they brought out the whole cast at Comic-Con when we were there, which was a cool moment. So the second that happens, of course, people are posting pictures from the panel and everything. But yeah, the disregard for spoilers was interesting with this one. And no one seemed to mind. Like it was very.
I know some people.
Oh, did they?
Have
Okay.
definitely minded.
Yeah, I tried to still like not say too much to people because I feel like a lot of the fun of the movie is the surprise of everything.
Yeah. Deadpool and Wolverine. I really liked.
Me too.
Probably. I mean, there hasn't been much in between. Now that I think about it, I don't think there's been anything in between. But probably my favorite Marvel thing since Guardians 3.
Me too. There's been some in between, but nothing anywhere near.
Has there been in between?
I mean, wasn't there?
Guardians.
Wasn't there?
The only thing was the Marvels, which I haven't seen.
There's the Marvels. There was Secret War.
There's been a couple of TV shows.
Yeah.
Like a handful of them. Like What If, I'm sure, but
yeah. But no, it was definitely.
To be fair, I haven't made an attempt to watch any of them.
I haven't watched any What If, but I have seen like the other shows, the live actions. Yeah. But that said, yeah, no, Deadpool and Wolverine. I feel like that was. I wouldn't say it's returned to form because it's not quite the same form as the other Marvel movie, but it was really good. It was just fun. You could poke holes at the plot. You could say, "Oh, there's a lot of cameos." And none of that's wrong, but it was just fun, and it's okay for a movie to just be fun. It can have some plot holes and still be very fun, and I think that's what Deadpool did really well. Is it was just fun. Like it was just a fun ride.
Hugh Jackman gave probably, I would say, a performance that rivaled Logan.
When he's mad in the car,
which is weird to say.
Yeah,
but yeah, that rant that he has towards Deadpool.
Did it rival Chappie?
It rivaled Chappie.
I didn't know he wasn't Chappie.
Briefly. He was the main villain.
Yeah, but he's like barely in it, if I remember correctly. He has like 3 scenes.
He was like the creator of the moose. He was jealous of Chappie, so he sent his giant mecha.
He was also in,
I guess it's piloted by him.
Was he also in Real Steel?
Very Australian accent. He is the main character of Real Steel, yeah.
And let me tell you,
which is another Sean Levy movie.
Real Steel is Sean Levy, really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
Come on, Jason.
Oh, sorry. Everyone. I didn't know Rock'em Sock'em Robots, the real life story, was made by Sean Levy.
Huh. Any diddle. You were saying, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Reynolds at this point is just synonymous with Deadpool.
Totally.
His performances, just as good as it was in those previous 2 movies.
Mm-hmm.
Which one thing that I was worried about with this movie was, eventually the diminishing returns on the whole Deadpool shtick, essentially.
Yeah.
Like I was like, at some point, a lot of these are going to start falling flat. And like, no, the comedy was just as solid as it was in those.
I think they pivoted
as solid as
subtly.
in Deadpool 1 and 2.
It wasn't quite. It was still raunchy, but it was like a little different. I don't know how to describe. Like they leaned on stuff more than just raunch, and I think that helped in that regard.
I don't know.
They had a lot of raunch, but like they had the whole like nice pool bit. They had the cameo, like each cameo character had their own bit. Like I feel like with X-Force in the second one, it was still like, here's these guys, but it's really raunch at the end of the day. You know, like Colossus saying weird things was like one of the bit. Like I feel like I don't know, like it didn't seem quite as raunchy, which I was fine with. It was still very raunchy. It's a very like on a scale of like 99% raunch to 100% raunch. It went from 99.8 to 99.2 or something. But like, you know, it was a hair turned down slightly, a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, which worked in its favor, I think.
Yeah. What else? I don't want to really get into the story of the movie.
That's what I was kind of saying with
go
ahead.
Like at the end of the day, this was Deadpool sort of being integrated into the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's at the end of the day, it's less about Deadpool and Wolverine being integrated and just more the Fox
Yep.
movie universe being integrated into the MCU, which, you know, at one point, Loki essentially did that.
Yes.
Or I think there was some other movie that essentially like
well, they it wasn't
that basically
Loki.
said everything is canon. I forgot.
Oh yeah,
what movie
Loki
it was.
did it with the timeline. So I mean, the TVA stuff in Deadpool is straight out Loki. Yeah. So all the TVA stuff from Loki kind of alluded to it, and of course they did the alternate world in Doctor Strange where they had Patrick Stewart come back and stuff. So they're kind of already, and they had like John Krasinski play a Richard Reed of a different timeline. So they kind of like nodded to, yeah, we own the rights to this stuff now. We're gonna do stuff with it. But this was the most direct. Like, remember the Fox days? Here they are in Marvel now.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing was basically a love letter to Fox, like to that era,
or
of
like
Marvel.
essentially to that
Yeah.
weird, because the Fox movies have never been amazing. I could probably think of, aside from the Deadpool movies, I could probably think of like a handful that I would actually just watch.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking like First Class is probably my favorite. Logan,
Not 2015
X-Men 2
Fantastic
is sort
Four?
of like hit or miss. 2015 Fantastic Four is probably one of the worst movies that I've ever
It
seen in my
builds
entire
up to
life.
nothing. It just ends. It's so weird.
That movie just ends.
Yeah.
Oh, that movie's terrible.
But-
Although there's a cool idea that I saw floating around that will not happen.
What was the idea?
So in the Ultimate Universe, Reed Richards goes insane, and he goes by the Maker.
Huh. Okay.
Which is like I said, he's just like an evil Reed Richards,
Sure.
and he's very, very integrated into the main 616 comic universe, and most recently, Marvel relaunched the Ultimate Universe.
Mm-hmm.
So he escapes 616 to remake the Ultimate Universe, which I don't remember the designation for it, but in like that universe, one of the things that he does is he stops Peter from getting bitten by the spider.
Oh, interesting.
And then so essentially he starts like this like weird like world order where different factions own pieces of the world. And like right now there's an Ultimates run, there's a Black Panther run, an X-Men run that really focuses on like this character named Armor. And then with Spider-Man, it takes place like 20 years after this new Ultimate Universe has been created.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a variant of Tony Stark telling Peter, hey, just FYI, you were supposed to be bitten by the spider 20 years ago. Here's the spider. If you want to get bitten by it, go ahead. But that's essentially how the new Ultimate Spider-Man starts with I think like a middle-aged Peter Parker. I think he's like in his mid-30s or late 30s. Already married with 2 kids.
Oh,
and
interesting.
now becoming Spider-Man.
Interesting.
It's really, really good.
Yeah.
And so there was
Yeah, go ahead.
and this whole multiverse idea, it's like, what if you just bring Miles Teller and you make him the Maker, and you make him the final villain after Kang?
Well, Kang's out of the picture now, but yeah.
Well, Kang's out of the picture now, and so that's what one of the ideas was like. Yeah, bring back Miles Teller.
Yeah,
and,
that's interesting. It does seem like to some degree, and who knows what exactly they're doing. I know fans are very divided on it, but it does seem like the whole like, well, if it's a good guy that becomes a bad guy with Richard, like that seems like maybe the Doctor Doom being Robert Downey Jr. Like, is it an evil Tony Stark from a different
being a variant.
Yeah, exactly.
I think they said that his name would be Victor Von Doom, so I don't know if. I guess he could change his name, but
or like he's just a variant that literally has a different name. It's possible.
Yeah,
it does kind of go against some
true.
of the other ways they do stuff. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Deadpool though.
Yeah, so that could have been cool.
Yeah.
We were talking about Deadpool. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do think it was like, and I didn't need like one of the things they did. Well, first of all, the cameos. Without rattling them all off, the Gambits was easily my favorite part of it. I don't know what it was about Channing Tatum doing that accent and coming in and out of it and it being so bad, but which was of course by design. But like I was just posting this on social like the other day. I can't remember a time I laughed harder at a movie. Like I was in tears the second time I saw it. So I saw it with you guys in Hall H and I saw it in a regular like Dolby Cinema situation.
I saw it last night at the Alamo Draft House.
Oh, nice. But yeah, so the second time I saw it, I knew that was coming. I knew the next time I'd see Gambit, I knew he would say something. I knew like the Foghorn Leghorn situation with his voice would happen. I could, even in the moments in between, I was still just laughing at that, and it wasn't even happening on the screen. Like, I can't remember a time I laughed at a horror movie. I don't know what it was. It was just like the funniest thing. Like, he is by far my favorite part. But
no, yeah, Channing Tatum's Gambit absolutely steals the scenes that he's in.
Yeah, 100%.
Obviously, having to do with the accent, having to do with a meta commentary about how he was never wanted because his Gambit movie, which is a direct parallel to Ryan Reynolds'
with Deadpool originally.
passion for Deadpool that led to the creation of that first movie. Like, that just never happened to Channing Tatum. So the fact that it was finally able to happen to him and like people are loving it, I don't think I've heard a lot of discussion about how this Gambit is bad.
Yeah.
Like, there's some people out there, they're like, oh, Taylor Kitsch from X-Men Wolverines is my Gambit. Like, shut the up. You did not care about Taylor Kitsch.
No, when's the last time anyone said the name Taylor Kitsch? Let's be honest.
Taylor Kitsch hasn't said his name in forever.
Yeah, he doesn't even identify as Taylor man.
Kitsch. He's poor Taylor Kitsch. He's just, he was meant to like,
be the next
blow
big
up.
guy, yeah.
And then just after John Carter
and
flopped,
Battleship. Wasn't he in Battleship?
Battleship flopped.
Yeah.
He was in season 2 of True Detective, which nobody liked. Yeah. I thought it was okay. Yeah, like, he was destined to be like a big actor, and it just never happened to him.
Yeah, it's but yeah, the what was I gonna say? Yeah, the Gambit story. When I was saying before about how Channing Tatum posted on social and kind of spoiled that he was in it, the whole post was about the like kind of how Ryan Reynolds like championed him getting that role and how like like everything you're saying about the parallels and how like he watched Ryan Reynolds do it and was so inspired, and it was a very nice post actually. But yeah, it's he was great. I mean, I never cared. Why would I have cared about Elektra one way or another? But it was like, once the ball got rolling and they kept doing the cameos and kept doing the stuff, I was like buying into it. I'm like, oh, it is cool. We got to see her again. Like, I never needed to see her again, but it's cool that she's here. Like, it was just, I don't know, the whole thing.
Yeah, and then the fumble slight so at Ben Affleck.
Oh, that was that was a great line.
Poor Daredevil, and she was like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's some great.
Just like
lines.
a lot of. It's funny how, like, especially related to the big three that weren't shown, because apparently X-23's appearance was revealed in the last trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Elektra had that personal slight, that joke slight to Ben Affleck, her ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had, all of Channing Tatum stuff with Gambit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had the other personal touch with
Wesley Snipes.
What's his name? Wesley Snipes, and how him and Ryan Reynolds just hated each other
on Blade Trinity,
from working on Blade Trinity. Yeah, and then just him being in here, like that's wild.
Yeah, yeah. And
I'm sure the bag of cash, like,
it sure would help, but. And I think Ryan Reynolds reached out personally to him too. Yeah, and kind of be like, "Hey, water under the bridge. You want a cool opportunity?" Yeah, but yeah, it was just like, I don't know. It's just I think I sort of alluded to this when I was saying how like the Hall H event felt like it just kept like one-upping itself. The movie felt like it just kind of like every time I was like, "Oh, this is exceeding my expectations." It found like another way to do it, and another way to do it, and another way. And I was just like, it was. I know I already said this, but it was such a ride. It was such a fun ride. There is a bit like in the back half maybe where it starts to for a moment feel like, okay, it's getting a little long, but then it very quickly, actually weirdly enough, Ryan Reynolds then turns to the camera and says like, we're in the home stretch now. But so they knew, but no, for the most part it's just such a fun ride. And also the use of Madonna, like I've had
like a prayer being essentially the anthem to this
that
to this
whole
movie.
Ending was it was so good. I will say, and this isn't to like slight the experience for anyone who didn't get to see it in Hall H. There was something really cool about, of all movies, to see in a Hall H scenario. The one that's the most meta, the one that winks and nods to the fans the most, the one that's like very self-aware. That was like the perfect, like the way the crowd kind of rode the waves of it, the way that the build-up of
all the jokes,
like the build-up,
all the jokes at the MCU's expense, the amount of times that they talk about how the MCU has not been good at all
Yeah.
since Endgame. Like,
and like take the L on multiverse. Yeah, no, but like even like you could feel it when he was like when Wolverine's gonna put the mask on, and the rumble that started in Hall H and the way it kind of like crescendo, like it was so. It feels weird to say this. It's so hype. The whole thing was so hype, and I don't care that much about Wolverine as a character. Like I watch the X-Men movies, but I haven't like seen all the solo ones. I wasn't like I know like our friend Victor's super into like the Fox era and like all X-Men stuff in general. So he was very into it, but like I was like still very hyped up about it, and I wasn't even that like personally passionate about the character, but it was just like something about the way the movie does it with the soundtrack, with the crowd we got to see it with. It was really one of the coolest movie going experiences, I'd say. Like it was really cool. So yeah, good time,
Yeah.
good time.
yeah, good time. Solid 7 or 8 out of 10 for me.
The movie, yeah, I'd give it like an 8.5. I really liked it.
Even
on second viewing, I still loved it.
Speaking like to what it does to the MCU, it barely touches the MCU at all.
It leaves a door. It leaves a foot in the door, and that's it.
Yeah, but considering all the, how would you say it? Sort of like the underhanded, like, yeah, the Deadpool is going to change the MCU forever, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really do anything to the MCU.
Yeah. You know what joke I'm
strange,
shocked didn't go over better in Hall H? Actually, come to think of it, when Deadpool did the Black Adam, the power of the MCU, like the dynamic is shifting, whatever that line is that The Rock always said.
Right.
He said the line, and I thought that'd get a huge laugh in Hall H, and it got kind of like a chuckle.
Well, that line was done during the Henry Cavill reveal.
Yes, that's true.
Right?
Oh, no.
But,
it was after. It was when he was back in TVA. When they told him, "You're Marvel Jesus."
Oh,
he was like,
right,
"Oh, the power is changing forever." Like that's when he said it.
Mm-hmm.
It got it like.
Well, the line also wasn't like a 1-by-1, because I think it was the what's the Rock's line? It was
Oh yeah, they changed like
the
2
scale
words.
Or
yeah.
It was.
See,
I think if if it was a 1-by-1, I think
it would have hit harder.
I think the laughs would have hit harder. But what was it? The power.
I remember exactly. I will say when I saw
the pyramid of power, or what was it?
No, it's not pyramid. It's like the dynamic the power. Yeah, I don't know. But I will say the second time I saw it, when I saw it in like a regular theater, there's a guy who...
The hierarchy of power.
Yeah, that's what it was. And I think he said it's shifting. I think he said like the structure of power or something in the movie, yeah. But there was a guy who loved that joke when I saw it the second time. He guffawed very loudly. And I was like, thank you, sir. Someone else caught it. Good. But yeah, it's a really fun movie. For anyone who hasn't seen it that somehow got this far and didn't care about spoilers, if you've ever liked Marvel, there's something to enjoy. It's fun. It's really fun. Yeah.
And I think that'll do it for this episode of the Randomer Nintendo podcast. Jason, please clean this out of here.
Well, we sort of covered it at the top, but for anyone who doesn't remember what we said an hour and 43 minutes ago, we're on all the podcast apps that still exist. So not Stitcher, not Google, but you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, iHeartRadio. We're on YouTube at Random Nintendo is the channel, which is also our handle on Twitter at Random Nintendo. And individually, if you want to hear our musings of the world about the world, I am at JSR7 on Twitter and Threads. Kevin is KVN Gomi on Twitter. And just Twitter? You don't have Threads, do you?
Wait, what?
You don't have Threads, do you? It's just Twitter, KVN Gomi?
I do have Threads.
Oh, is it also KVN Gomi? Well, find him there. And Angel is doing occasional illustrations over at World of Weros on Instagram. And that's all for the housekeeping that I love to do oh so much.
Wait, what?
I said that's all for the housekeeping that I love to do oh so much. And then you said, wait, what? Normally you would
Angel,
go to a final word, yes.
Angel, go ahead and take us out.
Wow.
Oh, I also forgot. My Hero Academia ended. I should have talked about that. Oh, well.